Hello, this is Alan Wheeler on my YouTube channel where I talk about spirituality and tarot, and I want to start a playlist or series on a pagan approach to tarot. This is kind of to balance out some videos I've been making on a Christian approach to tarot. And I plan to be using mostly this deck here, the Druidcraft Tarot deck. But before I get into my plans for that, let me take a step back and kind of look at the three main systems of tarot. And with the Marseille decks, developed in France, and the earlier ones in the Renaissance, there's obviously Christian iconography with the Pope and the Papists, the judgment symbolism, the devil card, and things like that. Now, Levi and others tried to reframe that with a more Egyptian origin. A lot of that, I think, was unverified personal gnosis, and so that's all there. However, now the Golden Dawn, from which spawned the Rider-Waite-Smith and the Thoth deck later, there's Christian iconography in those as well, although Waite certainly mixed in Egyptian symbolism and other esoteric symbolism there. It did have that kind of basis. Now, in Thoth, it's still there, but a little bit twisted perhaps, or reframed as Crowley, talked about the Whore of Babylon from Revelation and other things, but maybe from a different perspective. But anyway, in the Thoth, all these secret correspondences were brought out to astrology, Kabbalah, the Hebrew letters, alchemy, and then Crowley had his own unverified personal gnosis, in which there were aeons of Isis, Osiris, and Horus, and much too complicated to go into here. But also by way of overview, now those three main systems, I plan to be studying those more in depth in the future. But going in depth isn't necessary for meditation and a basic tarot practice for most people. Now, since in recent years, we see hundreds, probably thousands of tarot decks, different themes, from gummy bears to vampire decks, and we have the Mother Piece and Goddess tarot decks with a feminist perspective, and the alchemical tarot and hermetic tarot from that perspective. And so lots of variously themed tarot decks. The mythic tarot focuses on the Greek mythology, but then there's some decks that kind of come into the Celtic paganism, and some of those are the Arthurian tarot, the Sacred Circle tarot, Merlin tarot, the Celtic Wisdom tarot, and the one I want to study more in depth, the Druidcraft tarot deck. And I think this is a good one. It's not too focused. I think it's still broad enough. The only thing I think it would exclude would be maybe mainstream religions. But it brings in numerology from Pythagoras. It admits the influence of the Golden Dawn and the Western esoteric traditions that are an influence on paganism, of course Wicca and Druidry. And so those streams kind of flow into or synthesize, or at least harmonize, don't kind of contradict the spirit of this deck. So I'll be looking at the guidebook, and this is the Magician, and so you can see the more ancient roots of the theme to this deck, nature, and the setting up of the stones here, and so on. So I want to get into that in this series or this playlist. The aspects that the introduction to the book talks about that are shared by Wicca and Druidry and other pagan approaches are 5 here. One is earth-based, so it's the focus on the nat, hence I'm filming outdoors here with the trees. A focus on the wheel of the year and the seasons, following that with the various Sabbats and so on. The use of a the use of a sacred circle or creating sacred space, a magic circle. A recognition of the 4 elements, of course, and spirit in the familiar pentagram. And also the influence of the Western magical tradition. So that's the approach of this deck, and leaving out some of the mainstream religion and Christian iconography there. Interestingly, this, and I'll follow the author here, many guidebooks start with the major arcana and then devote maybe less space, and certainly later come along the minor arcana. But because Druidry and mystery schools are initiatory, they start with the outer mysteries and work in. So this guidebook, and I'll do it in my series, start with the minor arcana. And there's a, if I can find the diagram here, there's a circle of the inner and outer mysteries. So there's the 22 major arcana in the center, and then following around from winter solstice to spring equinox, all the minor elemental suits. And then in the middle are the court cards representing personality types. And so these are starting out here to work towards these greater mysteries. And so that's a little bit different approach here in the in this deck and in this pagan approach. I'll just close with one more thought, is that there's a focus on the alchemical wedding, and this is in Wicca dramatized by the coming together of the god and goddess recently at Beltane, which is the anglicized version of Beltane, I think it's pronounced. But this Could also be seen in ideas such as above, so below, or the yin and yang of Taoism. And so this coming together of light and shadow, sun and moon, are very important, I think, as we look at the interpretations in this more pagan approach to tarot, looking at this deck. So I will stop here. It's a lot for me to think about, but my personal background to this approach is that I moved from a conservative Christian mindset that, at one point my family didn't watch even Harry Potter, and then learning tarot and expanding my spirituality until a little over a year ago, I began having regular readings with a priestess. A month or two ago, I joined an online coven to just kind of expand, participate, communicate, and subscribe to a weekly Pagan Digest with Laura O'Brien. I'm taking some of her courses at the Irish Pagan School. So while I am planning to keep making the playlist and the series on the Christian approach, at the same time I want to look at the pagan approach to tarot. My goal right now, and it could change, is to be an all-inclusive mystic or all-inclusive mysticism. So I don't necessarily want to have a knee-jerk reaction and demonize my past beliefs any more than I want to demonize others' beliefs. So I don't know if I'll be successful, but I hope to ease the cognitive dissonance and blend the paths and find a way to be accepting, all-inclusive, while enjoying my personal mysticism and learning my spiritual expansion. So that's the background, the backstory to the Pagan Tarot series. Thank you for watching. As always, I hope you feel connection with people in your life, with online community, and on your spiritual path, whatever that might be. Take care.